All right, welcome everybody, Eugene Hughes Motorized. Now today's video is all about this little machine here and how you can set it up and get the ball rolling and learn the basics of stick welding. Now this machine will also do flux core welding, and that'll be another video where I go over how to set up and how to use it. Hang with me on the video. First I want to go over the basics of stick welding, how the machine works, how to set it up, all that good stuff, some things to think about. And then what I want to do is I want to give you some exercises, some things that you can do just to get the ball rolling here. We're going to start with doing some little tacks, making just some little bitty beads about the size of a dime, and then we're going to start doing some stringers, some beads, so you can get some practice in. I recommend you find you some steel and then watch the video, and then you can do some practice that I'm going to show you here. Okay, so let's talk about stick welding. Stick welding, you're going to want to get you some electrodes here. This is 6013. This is a great all-around rod. I've got a 3/32 inch diameter rod, which is used for metal about 3/16 of an inch and lower. And then I've got the 1/8 inch rod, which is suitable for 3/16 of an inch and up. Okay, now in the hands of a skilled welder, you can utilize either one on most applications, but it makes the job easier. On thicker metals, I go for the 1/8, and thinner metals, I go for the 3/32 inch rod here. Okay, so let's talk about how we set the machine up for stick welding. Well, you've got your two power outputs here. The top one on the MiG 145 Pro is the positive polarity, and the bottom one is the negative polarity. In most applications with stick welding, you're going to want electrode positive. What that means is your stinger, part that holds the electrode, you're going to connect that to the positive. Each of the connectors has a little tab on it that corresponds with the little slot that's in the connector. Line that up. You're going to push that in and turn it half a turn to where it gets hard to turn there, and it feels like it's firmly held into place there. So we've got our stinger. Negative current is going to go to our working clamp. We're going to connect that in the bottom. Okay, so now the working clamp, if you have a metal welding table or surface that you're going to be welding on, you can connect it directly to your work surface, or you can connect it directly to the piece that you're going to be welding on here, okay? So we've got that onto our welding piece. We're ready to turn the machine on. Now our first weld we're going to do with 1/8 inch welding rod, and I like to run that at about 110 amps and above. So we're going to turn the machine on. Remember the safety tip I told you? You don't want to be touching the work surface or anything to do with the working clamp and the electrode at the same time. You don't want your body to be the path of for the currents to meet. Okay, so I've got this at 75 amps, so we're going to turn it to, let's say let's do 125 amps. That's going to be fine for 1/8 of an inch. Okay, so this is a 1/4 inch piece of steel that we're going to start on here, and the first thing we're going to learn to do is how to establish the arc. Okay, so you've got your working clamp, which is going to be connected to your work piece, your work table there, and you're going to touch the electrode to your working surface, and magically the arc will start. Well, no, it doesn't always happen that way. So what you're going to have to do is learn how to start an arc, to establish the arc, and then keep the arc going. And that's kind of the trickiest part about getting started here. So what you're going to do here is you're going to get the electrode to touch your workpiece here, and you're just going to lightly scratch it, almost like striking a match, but you don't want to move it fast. You're just going to lightly, and I mean lightly, ever so lightly, just drag it. You can kind of, but once you hit it, you don't want to pull it up because you'll long arc on it here. And you just want to lightly scratch onto it, and it's going to start an arc here. It'll take some tricks to get it going. You're going to need to teach yourself here, and that's what we're going to do here. So what we're going to do is I'm going to establish a grid on this here with some marks, and let me show you how I'm going to do that. Okay, this is welder's chalk. I recommend you get this. It's great for putting lines on your pieces. And the welders like to use this because of the bright light created by the arc welding process. Darker marks aren't that easy to see, but you can see the white marks here a lot better. So let me go ahead and finish these lines up. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start some little bitty tacks, almost smaller than the size of a dime. And quite often when you're in the welding process, you want to tack two pieces together when you're welding them so they don't drift apart. The heat, you're going to be putting a lot of heat into your metal, and as it gets hot, the metal may warp and distort a little bit here and move, so you want to get things to stay lined up throughout the welding process here. And as well, with this grid here, we want to learn how to establish the arc, and we're going to do that by just focusing on these lines here, and then maybe one about halfway in between. I'm going to do half of the little grid area with the stick welding. We'll do the other half with the flux core welding. Then what we're going to do here, we're going to come back along these lines here, and you want to establish a bead or a stringer. Okay? Now, one thing I highly recommend you start looking up. You're going to need to do some searching on your own here and help educate yourself. What is a good weld bead? What is a good pattern? The weave, there's different aspects of it. What are the parts of a weld bead? What is the toe? How do you know if you've got penetration? What is a cold weld? What is a weld that's too hot? So we've got our setup guide here with the settings. Once you get the settings down, you have to learn your rate of travel. If I tried to weld this here and I tried to weld too fast, well, it's not going to give it enough time to penetrate into the steel and get a good weld here. So there's another aspect of the welding, is how far away you hold your electrode. While you're welding a bead particularly, the electrode is melting away and going into your base metal, and you have to intentionally push the rod down, otherwise it's going to keep getting further and further away as it melts onto the workpiece. You get it too far away, it does what they call long arcing, and you'll see the arc will be dancing all over the place, and you'll get a cold weld. First up, we're going to put on our safety glasses, get our welding hood on, get our gloves on. Now we're not just ready just to start welding. An important part of the welding is keeping your torch, your stinger, your electrode holder stable. Quite often, a welder will put another hand down and then use that hand, or even put their hand down and even use their finger against their other hand in order to help keep the electrode holder stable. So, and if you're going to be running a bead, quite often some people will drag and do a practice run, kind of do like like you're playing air guitar, to make sure that you're able to move comfortably in your work area in order to weld the bead and follow the line that you need to weld. Okay, so we're ready to start an arc. The electrode is covered with the flux, and if you've got a flux covering over the end of the electrode, you're not going to start the arc. Particularly after you've been welding for a bit, the flux kind of melts almost like a glass and will beat up at the tip of it, and you won't be able to start the arc. So what you're going to have to do is kind of hit it against your welding surface to kind of shatter the glass. Now watch this. All right, so we're ready. Let's go ahead, and I'm using my fingers. I'm holding it almost like a pool stick, and ever so slightly I'm going to drag it. Okay, just a little bitty dime-sized tack. There's another one. You'll notice when your rod is red hot, it's a lot easier to start the arc. So sometimes just popping it on your welding table to get it hot will give you a good hand in getting started. Now I'm pushing the rod into the bead the molten area that's on your workpiece, we call that the bead. And that's pushing a lot of energy into it, a lot of heat into it, and it's going to help the bead stick. Okay, so now I'm going to run some 3/32 inch rod. I can certainly put a little tack on this here using the 3/32 inch rod. And I'm going to turn the amperage down to 75 amps. I'm going to do my first one the way I'm supposed to do it. And the second one, I'm going to do kind of a long arc. I'm going to pull it away, and I'll show you what happens when you start pulling the rod away from your work surface. Okay, that one I got in there good, and this one we're going to long arc. Okay, I lost the arc here, so let's try it again. I'm going to do it again. Okay, so I pulled it away and we lost the arc. Now let's go back in the way we're supposed to. I'm pushing the rod into the puddle. And there we go. I'm going to turn the machine off. Okay, now these are the ones that I did with the 1/8 inch at 125 amps. And this one, and this one I did with the 3/32 inch rod. And you can see here, this is the one where I really pulled away from it and did it cold here. You can see that we didn't get a lot of material deposited onto the workpiece here, and that's what it looks kind of cold here. Okay, this one here I did, and I definitely pushed the rod in there, and I deposited a bit of material. You can kind of see this one here. You see a little bit more. You can see that whitish area around it. That as well. That's a little sign that we've melted into the base metal, and we've got good penetration. We can see the same here on all the other ones here, that we've got good penetration. Okay, now then let's go and weld some stringer beads here, and I'll show you what to look for. Okay, when you're running a bead, there's the old adage, if you have slag, drag, meaning what I don't want to do is start here and push. Okay, what I'm doing, there's also what they call arc force here. What I want to do is start at this point here and drag it away from my puddle. What I don't want to do is establish the puddle and then push onto the virgin metal here. So you're going to start here and drag it, all right? So we're going to do the first half of this line here with the 3/32 inch rod here, and we're going to do it rather cold, and I'm going to pull it away and let it stop. And we're going to take a look how ugly the bead is, okay? Now I'm going to pull the electrode away. And I really pulled away there. Let's do a little bit more. We're going to do it cold. Pull away. We lost the arc, okay? Now the rest of the way, I'm going to do the bead to the best of my abilities. I'm knocking off any slag stuck on me. Now I'm going to slow down. Okay, now I'm going to go even slower here. Let's pull it out our chipping hammer. So here's the area where I moved way too fast. The profile of the bead isn't very high, and we don't really have good penetration. It kind of penetrated, but you can see here where I started long arcing. It really, some people call it, it looks more like bird poop, okay? It's really not in there. Now, you want this is a 3/32 inch welding rod, and that's what we did this with here. You want the height of your bead to be about the height of your diameter of your welding rod here with the flux, almost, okay? And you want the width of it to be almost twice the width of your welding rod here, and we accomplished that. Now you can see the area here where it's almost whitish here along the edge of the bead there. That tells me that I've gotten some good penetration. I melted the base metal and we got filler material into that. Now let's take a look here at the termination of it here. And here I took my time, I did a little bit more time. We've got a little bit higher bead. We've got great penetration. That's what you want your beads to look like, something more like that, okay? You definitely, okay, and like I did before, I'm gonna run the first half of it a little too fast, pull it away and get some long arc going. Then I'm gonna start paying attention and try to do it the right way. I'm going to run it a little bit slower here and then work to build the bead up a little bit more here, okay? All right, hood down. Warming up our electrode. Pulling it away too far, we're long arcing, the arc's going all over the place. Way too fast. Okay, now let's try to do it the right way. I'm just gently touching the electrode to my work surface. Now I'm going to slow down and really push that rod in there. We're going to try to get a I'm just slightly moving the electrode side to side. So we got it a little bit too hot here at the end of it. Okay, so as you can see, I got lots of little bird poop here. I even got some undercut here. An undercut is where you have you've melted into the base metal, but you haven't filled it. Okay, you can get undercut if you're too hot, and if you're moving too fast, you're not putting filler material in there, so you're going to get a condition called undercut. So from here to here, it looks like absolute crap. Now I started up here, you can see I wasn't pulling it in a straight line here. Then I started paying attention to what I was doing, okay, and pulling a little bit harder. You can tell that the profile here is a little bit better here on the on this area here, and then I slowed it down. I did a little bit of a weave, just this little bit here, and I got a much higher bead, and then it kind of messed up there at the end there. I just kept it a little too long in one area. Okay, so now we're going to switch things up. Like I said, most stick welding you're going to want to do electrode positive. But let's see what happens when we do electrode negative. With electrode negative, you're not going to get as much penetration. And you need to check with your welding rod if you can run electrode negative. That's this here, DCEN, DC electrode negative. So it'll run either way, and as well it'll run on an AC welding machine. But let's go ahead and go back. 125 amps, 3/32 of an inch, 1/8 of an inch. Okay, let's go. All right, so let's do this at 125 amps, electrode negative, and we're going to run our 1/8 inch rod, and I'll run it alongside what we did here, and we'll take a look at the difference. Right off the bat, I can tell I'm going to get a higher profile on my bead. And I'm just keeping the electrode just a little bit out of my puddle. Okay. Now with this bead here, you can tell it's a little bit wider and it's a little bit taller than this other one here. Now both of these here are the same size rod, same size, same settings here, but I went electrode negative. The electrode negative, I got a little bit taller bead profile, and I worked maybe just a little bit slower here, and we definitely got good penetration. So play around with your polarities, make sure that your rod is rated for it, and see what you get here, okay? It's not necessarily going to get you a less strong weld, because as well you can work it a little bit to work it up. So we got a better bead, I feel, with electrode negative on this one here. Okay, I hope you see how you can get started. Main thing, you want to just do some little bitty baby dimes, some tacks, and then start running some beads and just keep practicing. You can layer and layer and layer and layer up, grind it down, layer it up, and use a test piece of metal forever. Check out right here for those of you interested in beginning MIG welding, getting an overview of it, how to get started, and an overview of the welding process and the MIG 145 Pro machine, and just some basics of welding. Thank you for watching. Y'all take care.